In this very room, besides blowing my mind with your prediction of the economy a few years ago and what would happen, you also told me, and I almost fell off the chair, that there are people in their 70s that have not paid back their student loans yet.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, I know. that is an amazing thing, and we're in this bind because over the years, Congress has gradually made student loans into some kind of special case for debt.
What does that mean, a special case for debt?
Well, it has no statute of limitations. They don't really have to prove anything up if they want to come against you for the loan. I mean, a lot of people say, well, 30 years ago, I thought I paid this, and now they're coming back to me after 30 years and telling me I owe them, $100,000, and that's crazy. Yes, but, it's almost on the burden, it's almost on you to come up and prove that, you paid them back 30 years ago. And that's tough because 30 years ago, those loans were paid directly to banks. And a lot of those banks don't exist anymore.
I remember when my wife paid off her student loan, we received a notice in the mail that it was paid off and kind of had a little celebration in the house. But I don't think we kept that document. Like, okay, we took care of it. It's all paid off. No. So how do you prove it?
How do you prove it? That's the question. How do you prove that somebody 30 years ago got the money and he was paid and he gave you a certificate saying you paid? If you don't have the proof, what are you going to do?
So how can you help someone in that particular position?
Well, bankruptcy court is what they call a debtor-friendly court. Mm-hmm. If you get in there and you raise the issue of, well, is it really a good student loan and did you really calculate it properly? Usually you cut a deal. They don't like to go and get a judgment against them which says that, we were wrong. Okay? They don't like to build any precedent. That's why there's so little precedent on it, because when they're going to lose, they settle up.
Well, wouldn't they be required, if they say that you owe money, to go back through the archives to the day you entered that college?
Right. When you sue them and say, hey, you filed that claim for $100,000, I'm objecting to it. Here's why. I've got an affidavit from my client saying I paid that, and I spoke to Mr. So-and-so 30 years ago, and he said that was paid. And then, now the burden will shift to them to come up with something that proves it not. And what they normally come up with is a computer record, and they can't produce anybody to substantiate the computer record. In fact, often when they produce the computer record, it often undercuts their case because it says something different.
We had a lady appear here a couple of years ago who has since passed away, and she was only sick for about a week. And I remember her sitting here and telling me that in the United States of America, you are better off to just get sick quickly and die suddenly, because if you get ill in the United States of America and you have a long-term illness, you will die broke. That's the way it's set up in this country. Your thoughts on that?
Well, medical debt, I always get people coming in and saying, well, can I discharge it as medical debt? And yes, you can. And often the other side of it is basically wishing you would do that, because then they can get rid of it. They get certain reimbursements from the government, and they can't do that unless they're actually actively collecting the debt. I've had people walk in and say, I'm here because there's a $200,000 medical bill here, and I asked my doctor, what am I going to do about it? And he said, why don't you go see an attorney? And that's exactly it. I mean, you go see an attorney, and we discharge that debt. What people in that circumstance need to do, and we don't do it in my office, so this is just gratis for you. What you need to do, if you think you're in that situation, or you're just getting sick, or you're getting in a situation, you need to see a lawyer about taking some steps to protect your assets.
Is there something you can do while you're healthy to make sure that when you do get sick and would get into a situation that you would really go into debt and you would not have income coming in, to protect your assets now? Is there, what would you suggest?
Well, there's certain types of trusts you can set up.
What is a trust for folks that don't know that?
Well, a trust is a situation where you take certain of your assets, you place them into a technical legal entity which is separate from yourself. You set up a set of trustees. You continue to use the assets, and the trustees, theoretically, maybe even yourself, sit over those assets and provide for your needs. But also, the first thing you should do is set up a healthcare proxy. Very few people do that.
Healthcare proxy is?
Healthcare proxy gives to somebody else the right to make certain healthcare decisions if you're not in a position to do that for yourself.
Okay.
And a lot of people don't do that, and that causes a lot of trouble for them. And if they do die, for their heirs.
Well, people are living longer in this country now, right now. Do you find that is becoming more of a problem in the country, that people are suddenly in a precarious financial situation because of health?
Yes, I do. But what a lot of people don't notice is that there are certain provisions within that tax code. And I was on the way over here, I was listening to somebody who was saying more and more people are working for themselves or working in small companies that don't provide for health insurance and this, that, and the other thing. But there are certain tax provisions that allow you to, with these new regulations, get health insurance for yourself. And two, there are certain provisions that allow you to get long-term health care for yourself, all as a deduction against the income. So a lot of people should be looking into that.
Now, you indicated, and we talked about this earlier, everybody who comes through the door gets relief. So you are able to sit them down and say, calm down, here is what we can do for you. That must be a good feeling for you.
Yeah, that we enjoy. The interesting thing is that everybody that comes through the door goes into a bankruptcy. I mean, numerous people have been coming in, and we say, you know what? You don't need me. You don't need to spend this money. All you need to do is sit there, and when the creditor calls you on the phone, laugh at him. And I tell them, if you just laugh at the guy, they won't call back.
Why is that?
Because they didn't get any reaction. They want to threaten you, they want to terrorize you, they want to do all these terrible things to you. But really, if they know that you're not going to fall for it, they're not going to call you back.
Bankruptcy at one time, and maybe it still does, because I've known you so many years, I don't think it does, but it had a very, very negative stigma in this country. But you've told me about a lot of people who have gone bankrupt, and they've come out of it, and they've been extremely successful. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah. The case I always like to talk about is R.J. Macy. Macy started 3 stores, went bankrupt, I believe, 3 times before he started the Macy's store that everybody sees in the malls now. Macy's itself went through bankruptcy twice, the corporation, not too long ago. But now they're doing very, very well. So basically, there's nothing to be ashamed of because you filed for a bankruptcy. I mean, it's basically what we call a fresh start. You want to start over. So we're going to put all the bad stuff behind us and start over.
Now, you have always indicated to me that when one is in a situation where they're going to be seeking a bankruptcy attorney, they should seek the right bankruptcy attorney. And I know that Richard Croak feels he's the right bankruptcy attorney, but what are some of the things that one should look for?
If you're a consumer, if it's not a corporation or a business, the website to go to is the National Association of Consumer Bankruptcy Attorneys, NACBA, they call themselves. And NACBA basically has a lot of members, and it has a lot of training programs for those members. The other thing you can look at is certification. A lot of times certification is meaningless, but in the question of bankruptcy attorneys, when they went to certify bankruptcy attorneys on a national level, they put in a very hard test and a very strict set of criteria that you had to meet in order to be considered a good bankruptcy attorney.
Now, you were certified by the American Board of Certification for Business and Consumers. What does that mean?
Well, they have 2 separate categories. Actually, they have 3 now. They have one for bankruptcy attorneys who strictly do business cases, and they have another one for bankruptcy attorneys that do consumer cases. It's not unusual for people to have both certifications. There's also a 3rd certification that I don't have. That's for creditors' attorneys who get certified as creditors' attorneys for bankruptcy. All right.
Now, you've indicated that when one files bankruptcy and they get through it and everything is settled, actually, it's a 2-part question. 1, how do you know it's over? And 2, you've described it as a new beginning. Where do you go from there?
I once had a woman call me up. I was in my office at about 7:30 at night, and you don't usually get a lot of phone calls at that time of night, but she called me up and started screaming at me that I'd never done anything for her. She paid me and she'd done everything, and she never got anything. And so I went to the file cabinets. We had file cabinets back then, and I pulled out the file, and it was a big paper file, and on the top was a piece of paper that said discharge. And that's it. That's the only thing you get from the bankruptcy court. One slim piece of paper that says, big letters in the middle, discharged. And that's it. That's all you get.
And discharge means?
Discharge means all your debts are forgiven. You know, you don't have to pay them anymore. Those creditors can't call you anymore. They can't bother you. Nobody can do anything to you because the bankruptcy court looked at it and decided that you were worthy of a discharge. And they do that most of the time, but, you know, it's a good thing to have, and that piece of paper is what you want. If you go into somebody and they say, well, you owe this, you owe that, say, nope, I got this discharge. If you go to get that car next time or the house, you got that discharge paper. You don't get a big court hearing. There isn't any fireworks. Nothing much happens. You know, you meet with this guy in a room, not much different from this. You have a little talk. He asks you, do you know what you're doing? You say, yeah. Out you go, and that's it. They schedule these things, some places, you know, 6 every half hour, so you get 5 minutes at most. But because there's some cases that take more, you usually get about 30 seconds.
So now it's a new beginning. So it's the day after your discharge. What happens then? Where do you go from there?
You go anywhere you want. People say to me, well, I'm never going to have any credit again. Now, 10 years ago, that discharge paper, you know, just hit in the mail, and the next thing they got was a series of solicitations for credit cards. That doesn't happen anymore, but you can still start building your credit then. I tell people to go out and join a credit union, get yourself into a bank situation where you're putting money in the bank and you want to borrow from them. They'll lend you money in your account, that sort of thing.
What is the biggest piece of advice you can give to someone who is in a precarious financial situation right now and may be heading towards having to visit your office?
Well, visit it. I mean, it doesn't cost anything. Most bankruptcy attorneys will give you a free consultation. They'll look over the debt. They'll give you an honest opinion as to, you know, what you need to do. You can also go and take the counseling course that a lot of these organizations now have. You have to take it before you file bankruptcy. But you can take it, and if you go through the entire course and answer all the questions, they'll give you an opinion at the end as to what you should do.
Well, I was thinking also, too, like people that have to pay off the bills, so they start going to the credit card, and they may pay off at the moment, but the credit card balance goes up.
Yeah, people make 2 big mistakes. One, they borrow money to pay the current bills. Bad idea, okay? And 2, they go into their 401k or their retirement and they borrow money from that. Never do that, because there's a real problem there. If you want to get yourself in trouble, borrowing money from there is the best way to do it, because number one, you're going to have to pay it back, so you're going to have less money every week or every 2 weeks to spend.
Right.
And second, if you lose your job, not only have you lost your job, you've also got yourself a tax bill, because now that thing is going to come due and they're going to ask you, they're going to treat all of that as if you took it all out that day, because the loan can't be paid back.
And then they would go to their credit card to pay off the tax bill.
Yes, and that's a non-dischargeable debt. You can't use your credit card to pay off the tax bill. Okay? Just a key thing you got to remember.
Well, how would the government know? I mean, if you go and...
it won't be the government. The creditor will know, because they'll see on their charge that they paid the IRS. Now, you could take the cash out and pay the IRS, no problem.
That's what I meant. I mean, if you write a check...
Oh, you'd be surprised the number of people that, you know, the IRS takes credit cards. You'd be surprised the number of people that handed the credit card to the IRS and they took it.
Wow.
Wow.